Now, many people are just learning about this holiday, marking the defeat of slavery. Perhaps you too. Well, you're definitely not alone if that's the case. TV shows like Atlanta on FX and Blackish on ABC helped introduce Juneteenth to mainstream audiences. Blackish talked about it in an episode from 2017. Watch.
Look, people are never gonna celebrate something they barely even want to admit happened.
Look, I get that. But at least can we have one day where the country acknowledged it? It would feel like, I don't know, an apology.
Wow. Can you imagine that?
Oh, hell no.
Instead of waiting for an apology, why don't we just do something? I mean, if we want to honor the end of slavery, then we should celebrate Juneteenth.
Wait, that's what Juneteenth is?
Yeah, that's a common reaction. That's what that is? But very common reaction. A Gallup poll released this week shows that 62% of adults say they only know a little bit or nothing at all about Juneteenth. Here's what you need to know. Juneteenth commemorates a pivotal moment at the end of the Civil War in 1865. It had been 2 years since President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation and 2 months after the Confederacy surrendered. On June 19, 1865, Major General Gordon Granger of the Union Army rode into Galveston, Texas. He read that general order we mentioned at the top of the show. It announced that General Robert E. Lee had surrendered, the war was over, and that all enslaved people were now free. 6 months later, Congress passed the 13th Amendment. It formally abolished slavery in the U.S., except as a punishment for crimes. Let's continue now with Janelle Ross. She's an MSNBC contributor and a senior correspondent for Time magazine. And the best part of all is she's in the room. I could reach. It's like you're here. Imagine. It's crazy. I'm glad to see you. I'm glad to see you, not just because you are a person in the room sitting next to me, but also just because of the significance of this day. What do you make of Juneteenth becoming a holiday, not just at all, but right now for this to happen?
I mean, certainly, I think the events of 2020 have everything to do with why this has happened, or certainly a lot to do with why this has happened. Last year, the Senate took a vote and attempted to make Juneteenth a national holiday. It failed by 1 vote, so 99 votes in favor, 1 against. So certainly, you know, the events that we all witnessed, the death of George Floyd, a Texas native, who I think for many people apparently awakened them to some realities of the way that race functions in the United States, certainly, I think, opened the door to further discussion about this holiday being recognized nationally. That being said, I think it is really important for people to recognize a few things here. One, that Juneteenth has been celebrated in Texas and by people with some sort of connection to Texas, people who came out of Texas, Louisiana, through the Great Migration to places like California, where Blackish is set, and throughout the Midwest and the Northeast. Since at least the 1930s, 1940s. In Los Angeles, there have been Juneteenth celebrations since the mid-40s, at least public celebrations. So I don't know that there is a complete lack of knowledge about Juneteenth, right, but there certainly is a broader recognition of Juneteenth.
Well, and one of the other things that's being recognized is just how many people fought for so long to make Juneteenth a holiday, including Ms. Opal Lee, the woman who's known as the grandmother of Juneteenth. She was at the ceremony in the White House on Thursday. Watch.
We want people all over to understand that what we do together is so much more relevant than our pulling apart. If people knew what happened, if people understood what happened and could rectify that kind of thing and make people understand you need to know this history so we don't repeat it. And heaven knows, it seems like we're repeating some of it.
That last part of what she said in terms of knowing the history so we don't repeat it, it feels like the country's in a somewhat different place now, not just because of what happened with George Floyd, but the influence of pop culture, raising awareness of Juneteenth, or shows like Watchmen raising awareness of the massacre on Black Wall Street, where the nation feels a little bit more like, yeah, we can't ignore this anymore. But then there's also that piece I asked Annie Carty about, is where it goes from here politically. You can't really acknowledge the past implications of Juneteenth if you don't talk about the future.
There are two things right here to acknowledge. One is the gap between our willingness to, and we are struggling at this very moment to even talk about the past in an accurate and full and complete way. But our willingness to then apply those same lessons or that information to the present seems to be where we are truly lacking as a country. So first and foremost, right, for anyone who is dubious about why Congress would take this action this year, there are similar questions to be asked about every institution in America, right? Where is your substantive action towards racial equity and progress? There is not an area of American life where there aren't legitimate questions to be asked and answered. That being said, there are also, I think, to return to what Ms. Opal-Lee said, there is something really critical also to understand. Mark Twain said that history does not repeat itself, but it does rhyme, or it often rhymes. Truthfully, one of the reasons that the enslaved in Texas were kept in bondage for 2.5 years beyond the point that any other enslaved individuals were in what was then the United States is not simply that Texas was far, far away and information hard to come by, that most enslaved people were in fact unable to read and write by order of law. It is also that there were a group of people, Confederates, who not only did not recognize the legitimacy of the United States and considered themselves a legitimate breakaway nation, but did not recognize that the war was over, the war was lost,
right.
And sort of signed on to an alternative reality, and then used brute force to make that the reality for those who would disagree with them. We very much have a similar situation today.
Yeah, and I'm glad you put it that way. I didn't want to put too fine a point on it, but I think that's also part of the issue, right? Is that there are a lot of people who don't want to put too fine a point on it and assume that history is repeating itself. But this darn sure rhymes. Like if anything comes out of Juneteenth, I think before I have to let you go, that lesson comes out of it. And I'll be interested to see how that influences the fights over the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, the Justice for All Act, all of these pieces of legislation that fit right into this legacy. I don't know if you are more optimistic or pessimistic or wait and see. I'm not sure where I'm at. Where are you at?
I was hoping you were not going to ask me about my optimism or pessimism.
We can skip it if you want to.
I was going to say, the entirety of American history does not bode well, right? It does not bode well for a willingness to take large leaps in the direction of equity, but rather sort of up and down, stop and start, inconsistent action that hopefully pushes towards equity.
Janelle Ross, a real person in person. This truly is a holiday of all days. It's good to see you again. Thank you very much.
Good to see you. Yeah.